Chevli. I'm a technical lead at CTI Digital, and today I'll be talking to you about why unlearning is greater than or equal to learning. That's my Twitter handle. If anyone still uses Twitter, I don't know. I think Elon has put everyone off. Let's move on. So first, let's define unlearning. Unlearning is a process of letting go of preconceived notions, beliefs, or habits that are no longer useful or accurate. It involves actively seeking out and questioning our own biases and assumptions, and making a conscious effort to change the way we think and behave. But why is unlearning greater than or equal to learning? Because more often than not, it's actually harder to unlearn something than it is to learn something new. It's also more important to unlearn something that might not be doing you any favors. And we've all heard of that saying, you must take one step backwards to take two steps forwards. And that's what it's all about. So, why is it harder? First, we are more attached to things we already know. Our brains are wired to seek out information and confirm our existing beliefs and to discard and discount information that challenges them. This is known as confirmation bias. So when we try unlearning something, we are going against our natural tendencies to actively trying to change the way our thought patterns work. Secondly, it takes more effort and time. When we learn something new, our brain creates new neural pathways to process and store information. But when we try unlearning something, we have to actively work to erase and rewire those pathways. This takes more time and effort than simply learning something new. I'm watching the EFL Trophy final just a few weeks ago. Bolton fan, we won. But before the kick-off, they sang the national anthem, and she actually sang God Save the Queen. Obviously, forgot to unlearn the national anthem, and it's God Save the King now. Finally, unlearning can be emotionally challenging. We often have a strong emotional connection to the things we know and believe. When we try unlearning something, we may feel like we're losing a part of ourselves or our identity. This can be difficult and unsettling. So, who's heard of the term guru? Does anyone know what it means? Roughly? Generally, teacher? Teacher, yeah. It's actually a Sanskrit word, and if you split the word into two syllables, you get gu and you get ru. Gu means ignorance or darkness. Ru means to remove or to destroy. When you put the two together, you get remove of ignorance. So we all need that some kind of guru in our life to make sure we can remove or unlearn the stuff that we've learned that we shouldn't know. An example of this is when I was back in my sixth form college days. I had a bit of a side job where I was a teaching assistant at an organisation called Kumon, and we had to actively make sure the children there wasn't using their fingers to count, because that actually takes a long time for them to actually learn something. At school, they tell you to use your fingers, but at Kumon, we're saying don't use your fingers. So that's a key thing I had to try and teach them to unlearn. But hey, we're in a Magento conference here, so how does it apply to Magento? Who remembers Magento 1? If you're uninitiated, you probably might try to write a product object in this way. Obviously, not right. But we were told to use the get model function, and we learned to use the get model function because that allows you to override any object there, and you could set the data, save the data, and so on and so forth. But we're moving on to Magento 2. Obviously, I've moved on. Should have moved on. I don't know if anyone's still using Magento 1. What about Magento 2? I mean, if we tried to do the same thing we just did before, that's what we'd write it as, but I don't know if that works, by the way. That's probably not the way to write it. But the equivalent get model function in Magento 1 was to use the object manager. Who here used the object manager at the early days of Magento 2? Oh, you don't want to admit it, do you? Yeah. So, yeah, using the object manager was this way, but again, we had to unlearn that quickly, and that meant we had to get away from our Magento 1 way of thinking to learn Magento 2. We also had the option of using product factories, but again, probably wasn't the right way of doing things just to create a product object, because we have to use repositories instead to create your product object and set your data and save it. Reason being, this allows your data to go through Magento stack, validation, plugins, everything that occurs during that time. But it's not perfect, so what is perfect? So we've got a bit of a scale here, and there's levels to it. On the left side, we've got using repository interfaces. On the right side, we've got Direct SQL. If you're going to use a repository interface, you're going to be protected by Magento stack, and it's Magento's promise to you that they're not going to change anything when they upgrade Magento if you're using their API. Direct SQL, well, you're in dangerous territory here, aren't you? Because you're responsible for what goes into the database at that point. But hey, it's slower to use repository interfaces as well, and it's faster to use Direct SQL. So where do you draw that line? Well, that's what it's all about. Magento is about choices, isn't it? And it's about what choices you have to make. And we've got loads of choices to make as a Magento developer. One choice is cron jobs versus message queues. Back in the day before message queues, I was pretty much writing my own queue using cron jobs. So if you don't use message queues, it's pretty good. Use cron jobs as well. They both have their pros and cons, but they're good at working with background tasks. Next up, do you build your extension or do you buy an extension off the shelf? Again, these are questions you need to be asking. You don't know what the quality is going to be like if you buy the extension. You don't know if it ticks all the boxes you need it to do. It's one of those. If you build your extension, at least you know what you're making, but it's going to cost a lot more, probably. When you get your extension, do you save it in app code or do you use composer repositories? Sometimes composer repositories can be quite flaky. You might want to potentially get down that zip file, archive it, and put it into app code. Or there's a middle ground. You could actually use composer to put it into vendor directory. So again, another choice there as a developer. Luma versus Hoover. I think we've exhausted that quite a bit today. But yeah, I think Hoover's the answers there. Do unlearn Luma to learn Hoover, I guess, is a takeaway from this one. And the biggest one, quality versus the deadline / budget. Obviously, we don't want to make sure, we don't want it to be such that the quality is compromised by the budget, but it often is, and we can't deny it. It is a thing. So, and this is one of the things where we probably have to have a bit of a frank conversation with our clients to make sure they are invested into the quality of their project, despite having a deadline and a budget. So if they can push the deadline back to increase the quality for the longevity of the code base, have that conversation. It's probably better to have that conversation there with the client. So there you go. Magento is about choosing the best choice. And how do you choose the best choice? Take your time to consider the options, gather all the facts. Don't just do what you're used to doing, and speak to your team. Let them challenge you, and you challenge them back. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to unlearn to learn something new from there. Let's take a step back and talk about what we can learn in our workplace. Outdated processes and procedures. Don't get comfortable with technologies. Obviously, we've been talking about how technology is going out of date, and it's good to be on top of technology, so embrace them. They're here for a reason, and they're here to stay. Project management tools, if you're doing more admin work than development work, there's something wrong. You probably need to make sure you're using the right project management tools that fits your organization. Bad habits and unproductive behaviors, procrastination. That's the enemy of productivity. Obviously, given we've gone through a pandemic, a lot of people are probably working from home a lot more nowadays. And you're not being supervised as much as you would do if you were in an office. So it's up to you to manage your time there. And it's easy for you to just check your phone and then 20 minutes has gone, half an hour has gone. You probably want to be able to try and get some focus on your work that you're doing at the time. And there's tools available on your phone, like digital wellbeing tools, that allow you to block certain apps from certain times from going. So if you do find yourself scrolling through social media, try these digital wellbeing tools that's baked into your operating system on your phone. Time management is key, ensuring that you've managed your time throughout the day. If you're working 7 hours, 7.5 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is, If you know what you're doing for that day, then it's good to, at least you'll feel productive at the end of the day, because if you don't and you work on autopilot, you'll probably feel unproductive and it'll make you feel a bit crap inside. Let's talk about tools. So a man is only as good as his tools. Organize your day, fill your calendar. If you're using, in your organization, if you're using modern calendar tools like Google Calendar, you've got the option of having focus time. That focus time allows you to set out your day and how the rest of your day is going to go. It's good to do this a day early, so you know, or a week early, so you know what you're going to be doing. Don't wing it. It's not good. And it also allows project managers not to put like meetings in your calendar just willy-nilly as well. That's a bit annoying for me sometimes. To-do lists, even if it's just a basic scrap paper and pen or a Trello board, you know, some things are just too small for a Jira ticket or something like that. So you just use to-do lists because it's easy to forget. If you do forget, it kind of bites you on your bum later on. Time your day. Your day is valuable. If you don't time it, you don't understand how your day's been, and you can't quantify what kind of progress you've made. Measure it as well, because then you can build the clients, obviously, if you measure it correctly. Dev tools, Xdebug. A lot of people still don't use Xdebug and still print. If you've not got Xdebug set it up, even if it takes you half a day or a day to set it up, do it. Code sniffer and mess detector, use it. We all want to be writing the same sort of style of code here, especially in this room, because Magento has provided us with rule sets to do so. Even simple stuff like writing comments in your code. I love reading comments in pull requests. It allows me to get into the mind of the developer. Reading code is a bit boring sometimes, and sometimes I have to bring the code base down and try it out myself. If I could read a comment and understand what's going on, put it in there, even if it's a paragraph long. I like it. Even for myself, when I write my code, I put a lot of comments in there, and I come to look at my code 4 years down the line. I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I? And then I read my comment like, oh, that's why I did it. So that Mage run sits on top of bin Magento, gives you some extra commands. If you don't use Mage run, use it. And there's obviously a plethora of AI tools that are coming out. We've got Copilot, ChatGPT, everything like that that's happening. Embrace it. They're here to stay, but don't let it take over your thoughts and your coding. You need to be the master of your own code. Let's take another step back and look at our lifestyle as well. I think Rebecca mentioned that we spend a third of our life working. So we've got working, and we've got sleeping. We spend another third of our life sleeping, and we've got, what's the other third? Leisure time. What do we do during that time? And that's important as well, because that will help you. So things to potentially unlearn, binging on Netflix. It's easy to leave your workplace and just open up Netflix and just go episode to episode to episode, and then it's bedtime. That's not good for you. It's nice to have a bit of a wind down, but if you're just doing that day in, day out, that's not good for you. Gaming's another one, similarly. If you're going home and just switching on Football Manager, I don't think it's going to make you the next Pep Guardiola. But try and play a bit of games, but not too much. Social media scrolling, late nights, all these things really, not good for you. But what do you do with your time then? What can you replace it with? Take up a hobby, play a sport, musical instrument, whatever. Each of these things will help build your mental health, physical health, and this is what kind of gets your mind away from Magento sometimes, and sometimes you need that. Sleep well. Sleeping well is good. That helps you persist everything you've learned throughout the day into memory, and then come the next day, you'll be a bit more fresh. A good one that I think is quite underrated is spend time with friends who are a good influence. These are the people that are going to push you forward in life. If you have friends who are a bad influence, they're going to hold you back. So it's up to you to decide who your friends are, obviously, but if you can find some friends who are good influence, you'll see the difference. And ultimately, it's up to you how you make your own habits, make some new habits. Whatever's good for you I think it takes like 2 weeks or something before something becomes habit. Try and make some good habits. And at the end, to conclude, one thing to take away is that the only constant in life is change. If you're too stubborn to make that change in your life, then you're going to be kept behind in life. So unlearning is important, and that's the only thing that allows you to learn. That's it. My name is Chevli. Thank you very much.